new warning box that just came out that Victoria was talking about. So now it goes until 7:45, 8:45 Eastern. That's another 30 minutes from right now. So again, they're kind of seeing what we are, maybe the eastern side of that storm starting to develop a little bit more so, where we were looking earlier where we had that shear showing up. So right here, and that's pretty good indication right on the edge of that warning. So the southern part of this will expire soon. Yep, that's what they're saying. So the rotation tightening up again, which is why they reissued it. And that's, again, while we're staying on the air. Right there near the Tench community, that's where probably the strongest part of that wind would be. We're near the Allert community, not far from there. Giant Pumpkin Water Tower, if you're familiar with that, that's what we're talking about. There's Jamestown as well. So you need to be in your safe area, these regions just to the north of this. I'm going to put a new track on this because we got an update, as you can see, with that. Starting to maybe not see quite as much as that strong, but Victoria, definitely, this looks stronger than it has, certainly over the past maybe 20, 30 minutes before they reissued this. So that's why we're staying with this across the area. But Victoria, what else are you seeing with that cell that's getting pretty close to the Jamestown area now?
Yeah, I think that what's interesting, Ken, is that actually a little bit further to the east, that's kind of where we're watching that stronger rotation. So if you look very closely, there's a little tiny red dot there, and that's our stronger rotation. So it's north of Tench. Now, it has shrunk in size a little bit, but we still have the bright green colors. And what I'm assuming happened is that the National Weather Service in Nashville saw this. They saw that the eastern side of that storm is where we've got some more strength, is where that storm has come together a little bit. The rotation has tightened some. So what should this mean to you at home? Should mean that you shouldn't let your guard down. If you live in Jamestown, if you live in Aldert, you need to be in your safe space right now, because if this continues to tighten, we have a high probability of a tornado on the ground. So treat it as if there is one. Get into your safe space, a room away from windows and doors, the lowest level of your home. If you have a basement, great. That's the best place to be. You want to take this threat seriously, because this so far is one of our stronger storms. We haven't seen that little red color pop up yet earlier today with some of the other storms we were tracking. Now, this is a look at our storm relative velocity, but I do want to zoom out for a second because I know we've got two warnings now in place. So basically, this warning, the southern warning we'll call it, that one's going to expire at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 p.m. our time. And then they've expanded it now to include Jamestown, East Jamestown, Sharp Place. This is the new tornado warning, and that's the warning that goes until 7:45 p.m. I think that they went ahead and did that because we saw the rotation kind of strengthening up a little bit. What you're looking at here on your screen, again, is our storm relative velocity product, and it's showing those red and green colors coming together. Okay, we just got a new scan, so we're going to zoom in a little bit. I want to name some locations. If I can see them, I'm going to name some street names for you there as well. Looks like we're looking at Taylor Place Road, also Glenobie Road. Those are some places being impacted. This that you're seeing here is where we've got our strongest winds. So let's see if we can query some of this data. Kind of near the Jamestown area, 46-mile-per-hour winds. Right now, we do not have confirmation that a tornado is on the ground, but you're still probably seeing heavy rainfall and damaging wind gusts. Remember, winds from thunderstorms can be just as dangerous as weak tornadoes, so take this threat seriously, make sure you're staying inside, and you're going to want to do that until at least 8:45 p.m. I'm going to remove this for a moment, and we're going to zoom out a little bit so we can all just kind of get our bearings. Again, the center of the storm kind of headed towards Jamestown and East Jamestown at this point. Looking at our reflectivity, we still have very heavy rainfall. We're actually seeing maybe the worst rainfall back near Boatland, but I don't think that's where the circulation is at this point. So torrential rainfall all across the area. Depending on where you live in Jamestown, you may actually only be seeing some light rain, but it's coming. It's on your doorstep because this storm is moving to the north. One other thing we want to look at is, again, our shear. Okay, so looking at this, looks like that reddish color may have diminished. So what that tells me is it could be going down again in intensity. Remember, these storms are doing that. They're very cyclical. Doesn't mean it can't re-strengthen. Doesn't mean that rotation can't tighten up. Also, this is just one radar scan, so we're going to check back and keep monitoring it. You want to treat this as if there is an active tornado on the ground and make sure that you are in your safe space. One other thing I quickly want to look at is what we call our correlation coefficient here. It's a fancy word, but I look to see if there's any differing colors popping up. If I saw a little blue dot on here pop up or a circle of blue, that would be worrisome to me. Right now, we're not seeing that. One other thing, though, that I did notice is that maybe this shear is creating a little bit of an arc there, so the storm is definitely strong. It definitely has the potential for some gusty and damaging winds. And looking at our reflectivity, still torrential rainfall with this cell. Jamestown and East Jamestown, you need to make sure you're in your safe space. Sharp Place, I know that you guys haven't really seen anything just yet. According to radar, it's probably overcast, maybe a little bit breezy, but if this holds together, it could potentially drift into your area. So something we're really going to keep our eyes on. Looking again at our velocity, still holding steady. I'd say maybe it went down in intensity slightly from what we had before, but not by much. So remember, this is an active tornado warning for Fentress County. It does go until 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:45 p.m. their time, and that's the more northern warning that includes the Sharp Place. Okay, it looks like they've kind of cut out a portion of the warning there. Makes sense because the center of circulation is right here. So places a little bit further down, Banner Springs, Campground, Jonesville, you guys are no longer under the warning. You've seen the brunt of this strong storm. Doesn't mean you're not seeing rain, but the brunt of this cell and the potential for a tornado has moved out of your area. Ken, anything else you're kind of noticing?
No, it's just right over the Jamestown area right now, Victoria. That's where the worst part of this cell is. And it looks like Squirrel Flat, 7:31. That's Central Time, so 10 minutes from right now. Sharp Place, 7:37. Jimtown, 8:57. That's going to be as it crosses over into the southeast Kentucky border and out of Pickett County. So not too much further. What they basically did is they replaced the 7:30 expiration warning with the 7:45 one. So again, goes for another 24 minutes from right now. But just north of the alert area, moving probably a lot closer to the downtown Jamestown area. Let me get in there. There's Jamestown. So yeah, we're very close to that, right over the Main Street area along 127 where it crosses 154, moving north towards Squirrel Flat. Also Flat Rock Road. There's Pickett Park Highway, Basin Road, Wolf River Community. This is what we're talking about as it's making its way north. There's Frank Campbell Roads. We're right there, probably along Frank Campbell Road or just north of that, near the Jamestown area, pushing north. That's where the strongest part of the rotation would be with this. And here are your communities that could be impacted from it. So again, these are central time zones, 723 Pine Haven, 725 east side of Jamestown, 731 Squirrel Flat, Sharp Place, 737, and Wolf River, 739. So basically right over the downtown Jamestown area right now, and that's why they're kind of keeping this going, a little higher populated area for sure there in portions of Fentress County. So let me clear this out. I'm going to back out just a little bit, and what I want to take a look at is that one product that we had earlier, the shear marker. Still seeing that showing up, and as I put this into motion, right there when it was near the Tench community, it kind of strengthened just a little bit. It showed that tightening up once again, and it's still kind of there. It may be a little more broad, but it's still worth watching, which is why they've continued the warning and why we're staying on the air. Again, our policy, if there's a tornado warning in our viewing area, we stay on the air and online until that threat is over with. I know people in the Valley, Knoxville areas, over towards the Smokies, it's not impacting you, but keep in mind, it's impacting somebody, okay? We have to think about it that way. There were reports of damage with this cell earlier near the Cumberland County area in Crossville on the west side as it made its way northward through Cumberland County. It's the same cell. We've seen it kind of weaken, then strengthen, then weaken, then strengthen. It's been that cyclic process all the way over the past 3 hours. We started in the 5:30, 6 o'clock hour. So this has been a pretty lengthy process, kind of what you would see in a springtime situation, which is odd as we're here in October. But hopefully this is kind of the last gasp of this. But then I really think the bigger concern later tonight is going to be the threat for some isolated flooding. But quickly, I want to talk about what we are here again. 8:23 is where we are. That's Eastern Time, 7:23 Central. So another 20 minutes unless it gets canceled or dropped earlier. Probably the worst part of this is just over Jamestown, moving north at about 20 to 23. It's almost moving north-northeast at this point now. So right over Jamestown, Pine Haven at 728, Squirrel Flat 736, Pall Mall at 746, and the Forbes community at 748 if it stays again on this current path. So just make sure you're in your safe area. It's almost running right along the 127, Highway 127 corridor until it gets near Pine Haven and then going to the north. Now look, we just have what's called a shear marker show up. Yes, it's a little bit elevated, but anytime we see these show up, it kind of grabs our attention. It's one thing that this computer product does. It sees rotation. Most likely, this is let me just double check. This is actually, it's going to be a lower level lock, which is kind of interesting to see, Victoria, that it's actually showing up there. So what this computer does, it sees the rotation, it calculates the rotation, it says, okay, is this rotation aloft or is this rotation closer to the surface? Yes, it's aloft, because keep in mind the radar beam, which is out of Nashville over Jamestown, we're at about 7,000 feet in elevation and height here. In fact, if I switch back to Morristown's radar right there, we're closer to about 5,000 feet. So that's maybe a little bit better way to sample this storm as we're speaking, but it's still right through there, as you can see, between Jamestown and East Jamestown. That's where the strongest part of the circulation is. Definitely worth watching as this moves towards the north and east. Again, I'll go back to the velocity. It's even showing it there, but it's not showing it on, well, it is still showing it here. So that's interesting to see. It's at least picking up. The computer says, okay, I see rotations in multiple levels. If you don't know how Doppler radar works, it doesn't just scan in one area. It goes in a scan, it goes up a layer, goes up, and it gives you a cross section, and then goes back down and starts over again. So what that was telling us is it's seeing that rotation, at least in multiple areas. It may not be all the way down towards the surface, but it's there. Now, an update from the Weather Service says strongest rotation on the west side of Jamestown, moving north. Storm's not as intense as it was earlier in Cumberland County, which, of course, does make sense. But that's where we're talking about. So, again, right over Jamestown, up towards East Jamestown, right along 127 Victoria. So still, at this point, not a good idea to let our guard down, especially when we've seen it cycling like we have, getting stronger, then getting weaker, and going back and forth, this ebb and flow that we've really seen over the past several hours.
Yeah, Ken, and I do think it's really interesting that you mentioned that kind of cone popping up there. Now, again, this is using the Nashville radar, but that still indicates that there is some rotation, whether it's high up in the cloud or not. If you could see it, if it wasn't dark out and it wasn't pouring rain, you'd probably notice the clouds spinning. Now, another thing to note is that our lightning counter has actually gone up within the past few scans. And when we start to see some more lightning, that can be indicative of a storm strengthening. Now, I do want to take a moment and kind of switch radar sites just a little bit so that you can kind of see what's happening if we turn on our Morristown radar. Of course, this is based in Morristown, Tennessee, and there is now 2 of those popping up. So this storm still looks to be on the strong side for sure. There is a potential rotation here, a potential tornado in Jamestown, headed towards East Jamestown near Sharps Place. If you live in Fentress County, or you know anyone that lives in Fentress County, you need to make sure you're in your safe space, somewhere away from windows and doors, an interior room of your home. Take this seriously. You don't want to risk it. This is an active tornado warning for Fentress County until 7:45. Now, another thing that I kind of want to do here is turn on our velocities so that we can also see exactly how this is looking. And I'm turning on our storm relative velocities so that we don't take into account how fast the storm is moving. It's not really moving all too fast, but you can still see the bright greens and reds kind of right where those circular columns have come up, and that still indicates the potential for some rotation here, some rotation that may be tightening. So again, this is near Jamestown into Fentress County. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Here's East Jamestown and here's Jamestown. Give me a moment. I'm going to remove for a second some of those cones there if we can, so that you guys can just get a better idea of kind of where we're located, because I know it can be a little difficult to see. So here's Jamestown, here's East Jamestown. That would be where the center of circulation is. Let's zoom in a little bit further. Pine Haven, you guys right now are in the brunt of this storm. If there is a tornado, it's going to be right near you. So stay indoors, make sure that you are away from windows and doors, and that you are in the lowest level of your home. If you have a basement, get there. Let's check out our shear parameter. Still showing that brighter green color, a little bit near Aldart, as well as to the north of Jamestown. I'd say the center of this is kind of moving towards Pine Haven at this point. We are seeing that weak rotation right now. One thing I do want to check out one more time is our CC, our correlation coefficient, fancy word we use. And right now, I'm not seeing anything concerning, but this is going to be something we monitor. Again, I'm kind of looking for like a blue dot, a bullseye, something that really stands out to me. I'm not really seeing that at this point. Yes, Ken?
Yeah, go back to the
1 second. What I've done is I've looked inside this, and one thing that it's showing now north of the Jamestown area, we're seeing a specific shear marker showing up, and it's pretty high, showing 80.6 mile per hour winds. Again, the one concern here is we're a little bit higher in elevation. Again, not saying that we're seeing those kind of winds at the surface because, again, the radar site that's in Nashville and Morristown is taking kind of a cross-section of this. Got to remember the Earth is round, of course, so as the radar beam goes out in time and distance, it goes up in elevation. So what we're seeing at this point, at least the higher elevation there, we're talking about radar beams getting close to 7,700 feet. So we're basically looking at the top of Mount LeConte, wondering what's happening below it, all right? And if we switch the radars, again, over to the Morristown side, we're about 5,500 feet, so we're looking a little bit down, maybe like Newfound Gap or just below that. But we're still seeing this little shear marker showing up, and that's a good indication to us that that potential is there, that we could be seeing some decent rotation with this. And again, as we put on, you can see that little circular shear marker showing up. It's that indicator for us that we're seeing at least that potential of some decent rotation with this. And we haven't seen one of these orange arrows or markers all day today. But again, that's a shear marker. Come down a little bit. Remember, it was just 80. Now it's 69. I say a little bit, using air quotes there. Still definitely worth watching, though. No update yet from the Weather Service out of Nashville. But again, this goes until 7:45, 14 minutes from right now. On this track, east side of Jamestown, 738. We're pretty close to that right now. Sharp place at 750 as this moves to the north and east. And it's getting right over, there's an update. Ventress County storm to gusting out, becoming an outflow dominant with the tornado threat decreasing finally. Still going to let it go till 7:45. Not so certain at that point just from what we're seeing, but we're going to stay on just until this does expire, another 10 minutes or so. But right here is the area that we're talking about. There's Pine Haven, there's East Jamestown. So we're still northeast of the downtown Jamestown area. It looks like the worst may be just north of you, which is good. Still, that warning's continuing. I would say wait just a couple more minutes to get out of your safe area. But this area, especially to the north and east of Jamestown, west of East Jamestown, is where we're watching. That probably has the strongest rotation with it right now. And I want to zoom in just to kind of see what road this is near East Jamestown. What is that? That's Pickett Park Highway. So we're near Charles Price Road, Pickett Park Highway, just to the west of East Jamestown. That's where it looks like the worst of this cell would be at this time, Victoria.
Yep.
And again, quite interesting to see that that may have been, at this point anyway, the strongest part of this storm. It just dropped off, and that would make sense. Again, like what they were mentioning, it's doing that cyclic nature where it's getting stronger and then it kind of weakens. I want to check, see if we're still seeing those cones. Okay, so we still are seeing at least some, but again, notice how tall it is. We'd be really concerned if it were really close to the ground because we would be seeing that low-level rotation. But again, because of the way the radar beam is, it's kind of high in the atmosphere. We don't have that luxury of knowing if it's that close to the ground. But we're going to stay on the air again, Victoria. I think still worth doing, worth staying on until this warning actually expires. Looks like it just came back. And notice as well, Victoria, north now, we're starting to see that red show up once again, or that stronger rotation showing up. North of Pine Haven, this is still 127 snaking through here. So where County Road 154 crosses 157, north of the Main Street area of Jamestown is where some of the strongest part of the circulation is. Flat Rock Road, Squirrel Flat, if you're familiar with that, making its way north. So again, that little orange arrow is definitely something of interest, of concern, I would say.
And that VTI has gone up too, Ken.
It has. What was it earlier? Did you happen to remember?
Yeah, it was about 2.5, 2.6.
Okay. So, Victoria, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. The virtual threat index is what we call that.
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of numbers on your screen if you're watching from home, but again, we are looking at this number here at the bottom, your VTI, and I keep my eyes on it to kind of see how the storm is doing. When it gets really high, when we're talking 7+, that's when we really get concerned. But today, we've been seeing these VTIs at about 2.5 to 3 or so, and they have been producing these thunderstorms that have the possibility of making a tornado. So that virtual threat index went up slightly since the last time I spoke to you, and that does tell me that this storm is still on the strong side. Now, currently, we've got our Morristown radar on, and here's a look at that column that you're seeing there on your screen. Think of it as something that pops up when the computer system, the radar says, something could be rotating here, especially higher up. We're going to continue to watch this. I do want to take a moment, though, to kind of remove that cone for you just so that you can get a better idea of exactly where we're watching and kind of where these roads are. So Ken was mentioning now that we've got these two arrows popping up. I've got the orange one here. So let's name some towns. Squirrel Flat, 741. Wolf River, 747. We're also looking at Davidson at 7:53. Remember, these are all Central Time, as well as Jamestown at 9 o'clock. Now, this is still an active tornado warning. If your town just got mentioned, take this seriously. This thunderstorm has the potential of producing a tornado if there's not one already. So make sure that you're in the most interior room of your home, somewhere away from windows and doors. If you don't live in this area, but you know a friend that does, give them a call. Let them know what they can expect, because this storm's still showing some rotation there. There's your reds and greens coming together. Now, it is a little bit broader, but we do have a lot of lightning. Look at those total strikes. They've gone up a little bit, up to 38, which was more than what we had earlier, about 20. So I'm not counting this storm out just yet. I do want to take a look at our shear markers. I know that Ken had touched on that a little bit earlier. This tells me about rotation. Looks like they've kind of cut that warning down a little bit from what we're seeing here. They've shrunk it slightly, but they're still going to hold it. Let's zoom in locally here. So again, Squirrel Flat, near north of Jamestown now is where that center more is, as well as East Jamestown. The brighter green colors indicating the stronger part of that storm. One other thing I want to quickly check is, again, our correlation coefficient. Nothing standing out to me at this point. I think that the storm is still potent, but right now we're not seeing anything that would indicate any kind of tornado debris or anything like that. Let's move this just a smidgen there. So we've got shear north at about 30 miles per hour, so it's moving north at about 30 miles per hour right now. Potential for 69 mile per hour winds in spots. That could be a little overestimated since we're still pretty far from the radar site. You're also likely seeing very, very heavy rainfall, and even if there's not an active tornado, also some very gusty winds. I want to go back to our storm relative velocity because to me this tells the best story. And this kind of gives me an idea of whether or not I think the storm is coming together or strengthening. We've got the bright reds and greens right near Squirrel Flat and Jamestown, and they're still pretty close. Maybe slightly broader than what we had earlier, but still the potential there for some damaging winds for sure. Let's query just a little bit of this data if we can. If my eyedropper would turn on for us, there we go. 48 mile per hour winds, 30 mile per hour winds. Jamestown, you guys are probably seeing some slightly quieter conditions because I think the center of that's a little bit further to your north. But again, this tornado warning, National Weather Service in Nashville is going to hold that until 7:45 p.m. Central Time, and that is for Fentress County. Looks like they've shrunk that slightly. One more time, I do want to put on a few of these towns and give you some locations that may be impacted. Look at that shear number. It's gone back up. We've been talking about how these storms go up and down. So maybe the potential here that this storm is tightening up just a little bit. Shear coming in at 80.6. Squirrel Flat going to be impacted at 7:39 p.m. Central Time. We're looking at Wolf River at 7:46 p.m. and then Asbury at 7:56 p.m. Ken, anything you're seeing? It's so interesting to see these storms tighten and then weaken a little bit.
Yeah, not what we want to hear, but been chatting back and forth with the Weather Service out of Nashville, who has responsibilities for issuing warnings for Cumberland and Fentress counties. They say, yeah, they're seeing what we're seeing, that it's kind of cycling back up again, and evidence right there. Shear up to 80.6 with a VTI of 2.8 or a virtual threat index. Again, we'd be very, very concerned if that's usually in that 7 range or higher, but we don't want to downplay it because, again, hard to say whether or not this would be producing a tornado. It's nighttime. It's what we call rain-wrapped. It would be very difficult to see. In fact, if we show you what's normally visible, this reflectivity product, it would be hard-pressed to know that the worst part of the rotation, I'll draw it, okay, it's right here. But if you look at it with the rain, you wouldn't be able to see it. All right, and that's, again, what the benefit of Doppler radar is. It can see inside where the heavier rainfall is, and it can see the rotation across the area. So that's why we're focusing basically on where this rotation is. And the same thing we were just mentioning, chatting back and forth with the Weather Service, they may have to reissue this a little further to the north as well. This one expires in 6 minutes at 7:45, but we've seen this trend. This is I've got it for the last 15 minutes. Watch how it's strengthened, all right? it's kind of recycling. It's getting its act back together a little bit across the area. And that's why we're staying on the air. We don't know. This could possibly be producing a tornado. We don't want to take the chance and tell you that it's all clear, and then a tornado, we find out, has touched down and we've got some damage or we've got some injuries. That's the last thing we want to have happen with this. But we're still just keeping an eye, at least here in the next little bit, to see if they reissue this across the area. But right now it's north of Jamestown. I'd say Jamestown, you're okay. The threat, at least the immediate threat, is over for you. Area south, Allert, you're fine. Glenovee, Tench, no worries there. It's Fairview, Sharp Place, Pall Mall, areas north of there. That's our bigger concern. Now, this track, this arrow, we'll see if it comes back, but what it's doing is constantly scanning and readjusting the path. But at this point, Squirrel Flat, pretty close to now, next 4 minutes. Wolf River, 756, 758, Pall Mall. And then we start to get out of our viewing area and get into southeast Kentucky out of our viewing area. Again, when you start to see the 8 o'clock hours, those are the eastern time zones. So these are central time zones. Anything with a 7 in front of it, those are in our areas that we're watching. Everything in the 8 will be out of our area. Doesn't mean you're out of the threat, but it's out of our area as this makes its way north. By the way, this is the Kentucky border right through here. I've kind of got the map a little crooked. Let me straighten it out here for you just a little bit. So now we kind of get a perspective of what we're talking about. So right through there. Still showing, again, 90% chance of it having hail, but only a 20% chance that it's severe hail. Again, severe hail defined as 1 inch in diameter or larger, about the size of a quarter, 25-cent piece. So that threat may be on the lower side like it's showing, but at least there's maybe some small hail with this, and we can actually check and see if we've had any hail over the last little bit with it. Interestingly enough, not showing that threat over the last little bit, which is good to see. But still, the possibility of the rotation still there, still showing up across the region. And we've got, what, 4 more minutes, Victoria, till this actually expires across the area. We'll see if they do issue it. To me, it almost looks like it may be going back down a little bit. Maybe we're starting to see it recycle down maybe a little bit, but we don't want to let our guard down at this point until we know for sure. Just make sure you're in your safe area. Jamestown, again, looks like you're okay. You're probably fine. Allert, okay. Anywhere down 127. Southern Fentress County, okay. Go ahead, you're fine. Gert, no worries there. It's areas basically north of Jamestown, Fairview, Cedar Grove. These are the ones we need to keep an eye on as we go over the next probably 15, 20 minutes or so. So it looks like it's just to the west of East Jamestown and just to the west of Sharp Place, but still these areas of concern as you are right on the corner of that polygon, the red flashing polygon here, which indicates that's where the tornado warning is. Victoria goes until 7:45 Central, 8:45 Eastern time, so 3 more minutes. I'm going to send it back to you for just a second. I'm going to look at a couple more things, and we'll get back to you. Heavy rainfall has been reported there and some pea-sized hail. Okay. Northwest of Jamestown. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, we're still watching it. What's interesting is just within the past 30 seconds now, we've got these 2 columns coming up. I've got this on Morristown Radar because it looks like that gives us a slightly better scan. And still, we're still seeing that potential for rotation. Now, the bright green colors indicate where we've got weak rotation at this point, but still something to consider. So if you're in Fentress County, don't let your guard down just yet. I think that Jamestown, you're out of it right now. You're still probably seeing some heavy rainfall, but really near Fairview, Cedar Grove, stay in your safe space. So let's name some places that are going to be impacted. Fairview, 753, Wolf River, 754. Coming in at Red Hill at around 8:03, if I'm reading that correctly, Davidson at 8:05, and Sulphur Springs at 8:11. I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to show you what it looks like when we kind of remove these columns, because I want you to be able to see very closely which areas we're watching. And so as we zoom in, we're going to name some roads, we're going to name some towns so that you have a better idea of what we're keeping our eyes on, kind of near Fairview. Also, as we pull just a little bit closer near Wolf River, and this looks to be, if I can read that correctly, Flat Rock Road, also a place right now that's kind of in the center of this. It's going to be really interesting to see if the National Weather Service in Nashville holds on to this warning or not. It's definitely on the cusp because there is still some rotation for sure. Let's turn on our storm relative velocity. We still have those bright reds and greens very close together. Could be weak rotation. We want to treat it that way. Wolf River, you guys are still under that warning. Our VTI right now still sitting at 2.8. and our shear parameter back up to about 80.6, so something we're going to watch. One other thing I want to show you, Ken mentioned there's not really much hail with these cells, so not hail producers, which at least that's one less thing you've got to worry about, but there is torrential rainfall, and we're maybe seeing a little bit of a hail core trying to develop to the east of Fairview.
Hey, Victoria.
Yes, Ken.
Sorry to interrupt. What they've done is here at 8:45 or 7:45, they will replace the tornado warning with a severe thunderstorm warning. So they're kind of seeing what we've been seeing the last few scans, that it may be weakening some in intensity compared to where it was, 15, 20 minutes ago. So what looks like will happen, they will cancel this coming up here at 8:45, but the severe thunderstorm warning will go until 8:30 Central Time or 9:30 our time. So again, he's letting the tornado warning expire. Circulation's become very broad. Issued severe thunderstorm warning, mentioning tornado possible in case it ramps back up. So what we will do, we will go ahead and send you back to regular scheduled programming. We're going to sign off online as well. We'll keep an eye on this to see if it kind of ramps back up in intensity like it has been doing. But fingers crossed that it stays at the intensity as it is now, a little bit weaker as it's moving just out of our viewing area. There's Pickett County. You can see southeast Kentucky just issued a severe thunderstorm warning as well. That's Wayne County. That's, again, out of our viewing area. So, again, we'll send you back to regular scheduled programming and hopefully we don't have to cut back in, but we will if that danger is there. Otherwise, I'll see you here at 11 o'clock for WATE 6 on Your Side News.